All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're looking at,
The Book of Numbers.
yeah, and this is a fun one because you hear the book of Numbers.
And you think like, oh man,
What are we in for here?
this is going to be a lot of lists.
Yeah, exactly right. So many numbers. And it's true.
We do have some lists,
There are some lists.
some census data in there, but it's also so much more than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've read through it a few times, and it's not just numbers.
No.
I mean, Numbers is a really interesting book of the Bible, and there's actually like
a lot of great
a lot of good
stories in there.
like really interesting stories. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a journey, The Israelites are in the wilderness,
yeah, fresh out of Egypt.
fresh out of Egypt, right? They've experienced this miraculous exodus,
Yeah.
and now they're kind of in this in-between space,
Yeah.
no longer slaves,
Yeah.
but not yet in the promised land.
Not yet there.
And they're trying to figure out
Like, who are we?
who they are, how they're going to function as a community.
No. Right, because now they're not just slaves, they're a nation, right?
Right.
They got to
Exactly.
figure out how to,
Govern themselves.
how to govern themselves, how to be
Yeah.
a people.
Yeah. And it's in this kind of a liminal space
Liminal space. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
that the Book of Numbers, it unfolds.
Yeah, and I mean, like you were saying, they're taking censuses,
Yeah.
but they're also like,
Encountering all sorts of challenges.
yeah, they're dealing
Like
with
rebellions,
rebellion.
divine interventions.
Yeah.
Grumbling and complaining, which I think we can all relate to sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's really, when you look at it as a whole, it's a story
It is. It's a story of,
of their formation as a people.
yeah, and I think even for us, like thousands of years later, it's still a story of formation for us
Absolutely.
because we can see.
I think there are so many parallels, with our own lives. Like
Yeah.
we all face wilderness seasons,
Yep.
times of uncertainty and transition, and Numbers gives us this framework.
Yeah, a framework for how to navigate those times, how to lean on God, how to learn from our mistakes, and ultimately how to kind of move forward in faith.
Right, because I mean, honestly, if you think about the wilderness, like how scary is that? You're out there in the desert, you don't know what's coming next.
Right.
And yeah, you've got all these people with you, but it's still such a scary thing to think about. And,
And I think one of the things that Numbers really highlights is just how human the Israelites are.
Yeah.
They're not these perfect,
perfect yet.
saints, following God blindly.
They mess up.
They're messing up all the time. They're doubting, they're complaining.
Yeah.
They're challenging Moses's leadership. And, I think sometimes we read these stories and we're like, oh, come on, guys, get it together. You just saw these miracles.
Yeah.
But I think the beauty of it is that it shows us,
How human they are.
yeah, it shows us that God can work through our brokenness. He can work through our imperfections. Yeah. And I think that's so important for us to remember today, because none of us are perfect.
No.
We all mess up and we all have those moments of doubt, but God can still use us.
Exactly.
He still has
Sure.
a plan and a purpose for our lives.
And I think that's what makes those stories of rebellion so compelling, because we see,
Yeah.
the consequences of those choices.
Yeah.
Like when the spies come back and 10 of them are like, oh, it's too dangerous. We can't go in. There are giants in the land.
Yeah.
And the people listen to that fear and they rebel. And that has,
Real repercussions.
real repercussions. It sets them back. But then you have
Yeah.
those two spies,
Joshua and Caleb.
Joshua and Caleb, who say, no, God is with us. We can do this.
Mhm.
And, ultimately it's their faith and their courage
Yeah.
that kind of paves the way for the next generation to enter the promised land.
Yeah. And I love that too, because it shows that even when the majority of the people are like, kind of losing their faith or giving into fear,
Yeah.
there's still that remnant that's holding on, and that God honors that, and that God works through that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really encouraging for us today.
Yeah. It's a reminder that
Yeah.
our individual choices have consequences.
Yeah.
But also, that even small acts of faith
Yeah,
can have a ripple effect.
absolutely. And so for anyone listening, like, I think we should all be asking ourselves, like, where are we in that story?
Yeah.
Are we the ones giving into fear? Are we the ones kind of grumbling and complaining? Or are we the ones who are like,
Stepping out.
stepping out in faith and saying, you know what? I trust you. Even though I'm scared, even though I don't know what's coming next.
Right. Even though the path ahead seems unclear. And I think that's the beauty of Numbers, is that it shows us the messiness of the journey.
Yeah.
It shows us the highs and lows, the triumphs and the failures. But through it all, we see this thread of God's faithfulness,
Yeah.
his presence with his people, his guidance, his provision. And that, I think, is a message that resonates even today.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me how even a book called Numbers can be so full of
Depth.
yeah, like so much depth and so much richness and so much that we can apply to our lives.
It's a reminder that our faith is not just about intellectual assent. It's about a lived experience.
Yeah.
It's about walking through the wilderness, making mistakes, learning and growing, and ultimately, coming out transformed on the other side.
That's so good. And, we just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, there's so much more to uncover.
There's so much more to uncover in the book of Numbers.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage everybody listening, go back.
Take another look.
Yeah, and read through it, maybe in a new light, kind of see yourself in that story.
Yeah, ask yourself those tough questions.
Yeah, and I think you'll be surprised by what you discover.
I think so too.
I think so too.
Yeah.